What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Week 7. Can talk waivers today. Couple transactions went down in the NFL. We can discuss those as well. And, of course, any questions that you guys may have that are not start-sit related. It's a little too early to do start-sit questions at this point in the week, but we can talk shop on other things, waivers, trades. General thoughts on anything else you guys may want to discuss. A lot of running back injuries, so they'll be the hot commodities on the waiver wire this week, the backup options, that is. And then, of course, we can talk about the fallout of the Amari Cooper and Davante Adams trades. We can do that first. I mean, it's maybe a dead horse at this point from a perspective that everybody has covered it, but not everybody has necessarily covered it from a fantasy perspective. So we can talk shop on that. We'll start with Davante Adams. Goes to the New York Jets for a conditional third-round pick. Becomes the other outside wide receiver opposite Garrett Wilson. Although you figure those guys will be interchangeable on the inside and the outside. So you know, they are the two top wide receivers with Allen Lazard, although he is having a good season, likely to come off the field now in two wide receiver sets. But this is going to have an impact on opportunities and usage for all three of these guys, because Adams, on one hand, Garrett Wilson, who is on the best, two-game stretch of the season thus far, now has to share opportunities and targets with another top wide receiver, and he no longer gets, the wide receiver one target share. Adams as well. He also is not going to get the number one, opportunities that he was guaranteed to get week in, week out with the Raiders. And honestly, dating back to his time with the Packers as well. This is going to be, split opportunities right down the middle in theory for Wilson and Adams. So while this is great for Aaron Rodgers, and, especially if you have Rodgers in Superflex leagues, yeah, I mean, this caps the ceiling of both of these guys, and any boost that Allen Lazard might have been giving to your fantasy team, that takes a hit as well. These guys are likely to cannibalize each other in a way that they're more wide receiver twos than wide receiver ones. They can both put up wide receiver one performances any given week, but it's no longer a guarantee. You don't feel as strongly about that for either Adams or Wilson moving forward. Obviously, the people who have Davante Adams are feeling better today because the situation is over with the Raiders and he will play. And the folks who have Garrett Wilson, what's going on, Fortune? Good to see you. Kind of, yeah. I mean, the folks who have Wilson are hurting, reeling from this a little bit, especially with Wilson coming off the best two games back to back of his season so far. So he loses a potential week in, week out number one target share, and Adams does as well. So, yeah, I think their ceilings are lower now, both Adams and Wilson. Same can be said for Lazard. The ceiling is up for Aaron Rodgers, of course, because they will upgrade from Mike Williams, who is unfortunately the scapegoat right now in New York for slipping down last night or falling down last night. But he's now not in the rotation any longer. It came out shortly after that the Jets had acquired Adams that Williams would become pretty much trade bait. I don't know what they're going to potentially get for him. It's not going to be a lot. I mean, you might be lucky to get a 5th round pick for him at this point. He's out of the rotation. Adams is, got wide receiver one upside any given week, but because of Garrett Wilson is more settles in more likely as a strong wide receiver two. You could say the same thing about Garrett Wilson. Allen Lazard is now more of a low end wide receiver three than a high end wide receiver three or better. So it's a bit of a cannibalization situation for the Jets wide receivers. It's great for Aaron Rodgers. He becomes a little bit more viable as a stream in one quarterback leagues, and in super flex leagues, you're doing backflips if you have Aaron Rodgers and are relying on him as a QB2 this year, or even a QB3. Obviously, that would be better, but you feel better about his contributions for a super flex team. Wilson, Adams, their values both take a little bit of a hit right now. Adams' value is a little bit higher just because now he's going to play again. But again, he's not getting that wide receiver one target share every single week. You could argue that he's the one that's got the camaraderie with Aaron Rodgers from all of their years together playing in Green Bay. But that hasn't been the case for a couple years now. Can they reacquire that right away? Yeah, they might. They're both pros. They're both excellent at what they do. It's possible that they pick up right where they left off. But Garrett Wilson, isn't just going to go away. It's like you can say both talking points for both. Davante Adams lowers Garrett Wilson's ceiling, but on the other hand, as it pertains to Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson is still a really, really good player, good young player. Cornerstone of the Jets offense for years to come. In theory, he's going to stay involved as well in a way that no other wide receiver two with Davante Adams has since Davante Adams was the wide receiver two, in the years of Green Bay when they had Jordy Nelson in his prime. So, and that was also prime Aaron Rodgers. We're now talking about 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Slight difference. They are strong wide receiver twos. They will have their wide receiver 1 weeks. I do not think that Garrett Wilson is a trade away candidate right now because to that point, someone's going to try to buy low. Someone's going to try to buy low on him, which means you're selling low. So I would not trade Garrett Wilson. I want to see how this shakes out. Lazard likely becomes waiver wire fodder in shallow leagues at this point. Ty Conklin is no longer a streaming serviceable tight end. You would think he was barely hanging. He had a couple of good weeks, but he was barely hanging on to the weekly stream role that he maybe had at the tight end position in fantasy. That is likely gone. You would think that this is pretty much like the opportunities belong just pretty much almost exclusively to Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson. Best case scenario, it's like a Jamar Chase and T. Higgins situation where they're both really strong options. Chase is obviously a high-end wide receiver one. Higgins being at his best, a high-end wide receiver two, low-end wide receiver one, which is great. That's the hope with Adams and Wilson. We'll see if that plays out. Time will tell. So I wouldn't sell either one of them. If the person who has Garrett Wilson is panicking, I can't imagine they're going to sell him for pennies on the dollar. But I wouldn't want to pay the same price that I would have been willing to pay for him 24 hours ago either. So that's probably an impasse in any potential conversations about acquiring one of those two guys. That's the Adams situation. The other trade that happened today was Amari Cooper going to the Buffalo Bills. Similar compensation. Both traded for third-round picks, Adams and Cooper. Cooper goes to the Bills, where he probably should maintain a wide receiver one target share in some capacity, because the Bills don't have an X-wide receiver the way that the Jets already did. Khalil Shakir is a solid player. Dalton Kincaid is a good tight end. Keon Coleman has showed flashes and promise as a rookie. None of those guys have the pedigree, and I know he's only been in the league for a couple of years, but Garrett Wilson has already, built up high expectations for himself in a way that those other guys simply haven't. Amari Cooper can be a low-end wide receiver one with this upgraded quarterback situation in Buffalo. So I like, from a fantasy perspective, I like Cooper more than I like Adams because I think Cooper should maintain a strong target share. So like that trade for Amari Cooper, his value goes up. He's not quite, we're not ranking him as a wide receiver one for the season, but strong wide receiver two play once he gets acclimated with Allen. Hopefully that doesn't take too long. I would think he's perfectly fine to fire up this week, assuming that he goes. He'll have limited opportunities and reps and all that stuff with Josh Allen, but it's the NFL. These guys are professionals. And the Bills didn't trade for Amari Cooper not to utilize him in a big way in their offense. Obviously, the Jets didn't. They intend to utilize Davante Adams in a big way. But again, the Bills had a higher, more dire need at wide receiver than the Jets did. Cooper should soak up a lot of targets relatively quickly. Relatively quickly. So it could get off to a slow start. Again, reps are important. They're critical. And this will be obviously Cooper's first time catching passes from Josh Allen. So there will be, it's fair to expect some growing pains. But I would think by, in the second half of the season, when we're kicking into the stretch run, Cooper should have some pretty strong value as a high-end wide receiver too. So I love that landing spot for Cooper. He gets out of quarterback hell and enters quarterback heaven. Deshaun Watson was holding Cooper back in a big way. He's holding the Browns back in a big way just overall. But Cooper had like a horrendous catchable target rate. Deshaun Watson was not throwing accurate passes to him. He's not throwing accurately to anybody right now. Cooper was still getting open. And now he goes from one of the worst quarterback situations in the NFL to one of the best. He's a big winner here. He's a huge winner today. Yeah. So feel good about Amari Cooper if you have him. Those are the trades. And then I'm happy to talk shop on overarching thoughts on waivers, and then I can get into questions. Again, shout out to Fortune. I see as one of my members in here, helping to appreciate the support of the channel. I don't see any other members in here, but just as a reminder for anybody just jumping in, first of all, happy Tuesday, everybody. Hopefully you got some wins over the weekend, and hopefully everybody's doing well. But special shout out to my members. They will get priority access as far as responses, answers to their questions, responses to their comments. That is one of the perks of being a member of the channel if you are interested. If not, I will get to everybody else, but I just ask for some patience as I work through those member questions first. So already gave, again, on Garrett Wilson, already kind of answered this one because I happened to see it, but is he a buy low? Sure, he's a buy low, but he's a buy low, but I can't imagine anybody who has Garrett Wilson is going to be selling that short on him because he's coming off 2 good games. I feel like he's a difficult person to negotiate on right now because he's a difficult player to negotiate on because on one hand, yes, you could try to haggle because now Davante Adams is in the mix, but on the other hand, Garrett Wilson is coming off the best 2 weeks of his season so far, and so I feel like there's going to be a little bit of a difficult middle ground to find in a trade. If you can buy low on Garrett Wilson, and what that means essentially is you have to pay less today than you would have had to pay 24 hours ago, then by all means, look into it. I just have a hard time imagining that the person who has Garrett Wilson is willing to ultimately do it, even with the trade, because they can come back and argue, well, I just don't want to do that because I'm selling low and he's coming off 2 really good games. I'm just having a hard time pulling that trigger. You could try, but I can't imagine. That's going to be a difficult. That's going to be a difficult one to sell to anybody who has Garrett Wilson, because they'll just come back and say he's coming off 2 really good games. I can't just automatically sell lower on him just because Devontae Adams is in the mix now. Care or don't care, Kyler versus Baker. I mean, Baker Mayfield is balling the fuck out. Let's be blunt about this. Baker Mayfield is killing it right now. And I know he threw 3 interceptions against the Saints on the road. Tough spot, division opponent, all that good stuff. But the offense is elite. Baker is a QB, like a top 6, I think, QB1 on the season. I think fantasy points per game, I think he's 2nd behind Lamar. And the Bucs are averaging like 30 points a game. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, both wide receiver 1s rest of season because of how big, not because, both of them are excellent, but also Baker is awesome. Baker is balling out right now. I care very much about Baker. As far as Kyler, I mean, if this is just like brutal, like just honest thoughts about these players, I mean, Kyler is what he is. He will run, he will scramble, and he is an elite quarterback option for fantasy, but he has to run. And there have been a couple of weeks this year where those numbers weren't there at the end of the day. I mean, just this past week, he had, he's cleared 45 yards rushing in 4 of 6 games, but then there are 2 other games where he has 3 rushing yards, and this past week he had 14 rushing yards. Like, that's not going to get it done because Kyler he's not one of those dudes throwing for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's giving you like closer to 200 yards passing per game. And in 3 of 6 games this year, he's under on those numbers. He has 1 game this year with 250 yards passing, and it was against the Rams, who can't stop a cold. I feel like I'm being a little critical of Kyler here, but he's also only had 2 QB1 weeks this year for fantasy. He was against the Rams, he was the overall QB1, and then against the 49ers on the road, go figure, he was the QB5. But that was because he ran for 83 yards and a touchdown. He's only given you like 200 passing yards and 1 passing score. Now, he's not really turning the ball over, which is good. But Kyler's been more of like a boring floor play than like a Konami code, dual threat, for especially for fantasy quarterback this year. He's been kind of blah. So, the way fortunate that you kind of like pose the question, I guess I would say I don't care about Kyler Murray right now because he's not living up to what we expect from a guy with his skill set and of his caliber. We've seen him ball out before. He's not balling out right now. He's doing all right. He's doing okay. The Cardinals don't totally stink the way they did last year without him. So that's a testament to his value as a real life NFL player. But I mean, I think I was looking at give me a second. I was looking at a league with 6-point passing touchdowns where he's not doing that well. Let me look at a league that's a little bit more standard scoring where it's 4 points for a passing score and then, of course, 6 points for a rushing touchdown. His numbers are still very okay, not great. In standard scoring, he is the QB 15, the QB1, again, overall QB1 week 2, QB17, QB24, QB5 on the road against San Francisco, which was a huge performance. And then this past week on the road, tough spot against Green Bay, but he's the QB25. He ran for 14 yards. Kyler's okay, and he has not met expectations. Baker has blown past his. So I care about Baker Mayfield, and I kind of don't care about Kyler Murray right now. He's been disappointing. Higgins and Hubbard for Cooper. I would say that's fair. Chuba's been really good this year. I guess I would say, with Jonathan Brooks coming back, I'm tentatively interested in moving off of Chuba, but I only say tentatively because Chuba has been playing really well, especially since Andy Dalton was inserted into the lineup. So I have a little bit of hesitancy, but I get it. Hubbard is decent running back depth, and honestly, without Brooks yet in the lineup, I mean, he's been an RB1, I think, the past couple of weeks since Andy Dalton was named the starter. Good yards per carry. Panthers' offensive line has miraculously started playing better since Bryce Young got benched. Go figure, right? Chuba's been great. I would be, I would have, I do have a little bit of pause about how much value he's going to have in the second half of the season when Jonathan Brooks is up to speed. That's probably going to take another few weeks. So I would imagine Chuba's going to be really solid for, I would say, another 2 to 4 weeks. After that, it'll be curious to see what that backfield split looks like, because the Panthers, say what you want, whether you're a Chuba believer or not, or a Brooks believer or not, the Panthers took Brooks in the second round knowing that he would not be ready to start this season. They're going to play him, and the practice window is getting opened up this week. They'll ease him in, right? He'll see 20% of the snaps in his first game. Maybe that gets up to 35% of the snaps week 2, like his second game back. And then maybe, maybe it gets a little bit closer to 50%, his third and fourth weeks back. And then we'll see how that goes from there. But that could be bad news for Chuba Hubbard. It could. To Chuba's credit, he's playing incredibly well right now, especially since Andy Dalton was inserted into the lineup. So if you are the person who has Chuba, I don't mind the idea of exploring opportunities to move off of him. I would want to get a running back in return if I'm selling Higgins and Hubbard. But obviously, if you're trying to acquire Cooper right now, you're trying to acquire him in a buy high time. His value went up today. He's worth more than, just like Garrett Wilson is maybe on paper worth a little less in fantasy than he was 24 hours ago. Cooper is now worth a little more than he was 24 hours ago, and maybe more than a little more. Cooper is worth more in fantasy than he was 24 hours ago. So yeah, it's a buy high if you're trying to acquire Amari Cooper, which is fine. But I'm not always a fan of being the one on the side of getting one in a 2-for-1 trade. And if I have Cooper, I would probably voice the same concerns about Chuba Hubbard. Well, I don't know. Is he going to be the dude the rest of the season when Jonathan Brooks comes back? So if you can move off of Higgins and Hubbard for Cooper, it's not bad. It's not bad. Because I would take Cooper over Higgins in a 1-for-1 swap, but adding Hubbard makes it interesting if I need the running back depth. So if you're good at running back, if you're good at running back, then you could try to acquire Cooper for that. All right. Hopefully, Fortune, that helps. I feel like I talked in circles a little bit about that trade. I'm trying to decide what side I would rather have. On one hand, I want the 2-for-1, but on the other hand, I'd rather have Cooper than Higgins straight up, and I have question marks about Chuba's value second half of the season. Okay. I'm doing questions. I was gonna go over a general overview of waivers this week. So if you guys would like that, I'm happy to do that. But in the meantime, I can start answering questions that folks have, because I see quite a few popping in to the chat. So I want to make sure I get to everybody. So let's get into it. But I can do if you guys would like an overarching view of waivers, and then I can do that. Or you could just ask your own specific questions and we can talk through those. So speaking of waivers, you need one between Downs, Dobbs, Douglas, or Christian Watson. I want to say it's Josh Downs, but if Anthony Richardson is coming back, which he's expected to come back this week, then I don't necessarily know how that plays out. I would personally, I know that both of them caught a touchdown this past week, but I would personally rather have Christian Watson. I think he's a little bit more boom bust, but his ceiling is making a big play down the field for a score, because he's the fastest. I don't know if he's faster than Jay. I think he's got more pure speed than Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed is the better overall wide receiver. Let's not make any mistake. But I think Watson is their best pure explosive playmaker at wide receiver. And I've always been a sucker for those guys, the guys that can just run down the field past everybody because they're faster than you. And if there's not a safety over the top, they're open to catch a long bomb for a score. Those are always been the guys that I like. So for me, it's Watson. I want to say that Josh Downs is my answer here, but I can't, knowing that Anthony Richardson is coming back healthy. You would think the starting quarterback coming back would be better news for the starting wide receivers than the backup quarterback continuing to get opportunities. But in the situation where it comes to the Colts, right now, today, I have more confidence in the wide receivers when Joe Flacco is the quarterback, and Anthony Richardson kind of needs to prove it. He's the future of the team, so let's not make any mistake there. They drafted him 4th overall just last year, and he's only played a handful of games dating back to college, not just in the NFL. So he needs the reps, he needs the time, he needs the opportunity to grow and develop, and he will get that. But for the right now, for the short term, I feel less confident about the Colts wide receivers if Anthony Richardson is the starter. So I'll say Christian Watson. If I knew Joe Flacco was going to start for another couple of weeks, I would say Downs. But because it looks like Richardson is going to come back this week with barring any setbacks, that's the report, I got to move Downs down a little bit, pun intended. And I'll say Watson. I'll say that's Watson. We have a trade. The Texans are sending running back Cam Akers to the Minnesota Vikings. Houston gets a 2026 conditional 6th round pick in exchange for Akers and a 2026 conditional 7th round pick. I can't believe they got a 6th round pick for Cam Akers. Okay, so Cam Akers to Minnesota. I don't know what that means as it pertains to Aaron Jones and his status right now. Going to move off of that comment that I had. And we had it at the bottom of the chat. You guys are on top of it. Yeah. Cam Akers to the Houston Texans. This means two things. Joe Mixon is 100% fine and past his injury, which we already knew after his performance this past week. And it's possible that Aaron Jones is looking at an extended absence. Either that or the Vikings intend to be incredibly cautious with Aaron Jones moving forward. I would say either way, that's maybe not the best development for Aaron Jones. Could be nothing. This also, if you were looking at Ty Chandler on the waiver wire for this week, now it's like, what the hell? I mean, I guess he might be fine for this week, but if they make this move, I got to imagine Minnesota wants to somehow, get Cam Akers some opportunities, or he's at least a candidate for some opportunities. I would think this is not. If you were looking at, if you have Aaron Jones, this is a little like the alarms are going off a little bit. It's like, okay, I'm not going to panic yet, but this doesn't necessarily make me feel all that great. And if you were looking at Ty Chandler as a potential waiver wire ad this week, you can still go that route again, because it's possible that this is a less than ideal sign about Aaron Jones's health and or availability in the short term. So Chandler could still be a viable waiver wire ad, but he doesn't stand out as much anymore. Now, rather take a shot on Ray Davis after what we saw last night. If Tyrone Tracy is still out there, I'd rather have him. Depending on Jordan Mason's status, I may rather have Isaac Guerendo than Ty Chandler. Kimani Vidal, hell, Sean Tucker if Rashad White is out again this week. Depending on Jonathan Taylor's health, I might want to rather have Tyler Goodson for a week over Ty Chandler. I mean, I don't want to stoop too low because it's not like Cam Akers is a world beater at this point in his career. Sorry, no disrespect. But this will cut into, Ty Chandler is going to get the yeoman's share of opportunities if Aaron Jones has to miss time. He still might, but now Cam Akers is in the mix as a depth play. So Ty Chandler down the list a little bit as far as running back waiver wire ads this week. I would rather, if you're looking at running backs on the wire this week, I'll just, who would I rather have? Ty Chandler or Tyrone Tracy? I'd rather have Tracy. Would I rather have Ty Chandler or Ray Davis? I'd probably rather have Ray Davis. Then pending the health of Jordan Mason and Jonathan Taylor, if they have to miss yet another week, for Jordan Mason, it would be his first week. If Taylor has to miss yet another week, I might prefer Guerendo. I might prefer Tyler Goodson to Ty Chandler. He's still fine as a speculative ad, but it's not as clear cut for Ty Chandler. So, that's my rapid thoughts, my rapid reaction on Cam Akers going to the Minnesota Vikings in a trade from the Houston Texans. All right, let me get back to questions. Thank you for coming to my Cam Akers TED Talk. You have Cooper, so there you go. Do you sell high on Cook? You have Walker, you have Mason, you have McCaffrey, you have Bucky. So you don't know. What we don't know is Jordan Mason going to play this week? What's the latest on his the injury that he suffered this past week? I'm looking this up. At practice today. Okay. So he's probably fine. All right, maybe I would prefer to have Ty Chandler over Isaac Guerendo, assuming Jordan Mason is back. But I'd rather have a Tyrone Tracy than Ty Chandler. I mean, I don't think I would sell high on James Cook just because you now you have Cooper and they're both on the same team. I mean, you could sell him, I guess, for another wide receiver. You could sell Cook and either Kmet or McBride for like a stud wide receiver because you don't need 2 tight ends. But I wouldn't be so quick to sell running back depth without getting any in return because Walker's awesome. Bucky is looking like a strong RB1 play as long as Rachaad White is out, and it looks like he might be missing another week or two. If the latest report that I saw is accurate, never know. And then you have Mason and McCaffrey, which is fine, but like all it takes is an injury to one of those guys, and then all of a sudden you're going to wish you had James Cook unless you acquire a running back in the deal. I wouldn't be so quick to sell James Cook just because you have Amari Cooper and now they're both on the Bills. Like DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, that's a volatile wide receiver 3 week to week. So maybe you want to look at upgrading at wide receiver. I would try to do it with one of those tight ends first. And you could sell Kmet coming off a 2-touchdown game. He's on his bye this week, so he loses a little bit of steam because you can't play him this week. But I hate rostering 2 tight ends. To me, that's just creating a headache for yourself week to week. I'd rather just have 1 tight end and ride or die with that one. So I would start there before I sell running back depth. I would start there. Someone dropped. Oh, you did pick up Mahomes. Mahomes is a QB2. So, it might sound crazy to drop Mahomes, but in 1 quarterback leagues, there are 12 other quarterbacks. If it's a 10-team league, there are 10 quarterbacks better than Patrick Mahomes week to week. If it's a 12-team league, there are 12 teams, 12 quarterback options better than Patrick Mahomes for fantasy week to week. So you could pick him up. I would not advise playing him. Like guys I would rather start any given week over Patrick Mahomes in fantasy. Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy. Dak had a bad game, but I'd rather play Dak most weeks. Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield. Kyler's been disappointing, but Kyler runs more than Mahomes, so I would rather take a shot on him week to week. Like Mahomes is down the pecking order for fantasy quarterbacks. It might look crazy to drop Patrick Mahomes in 1 quarterback leagues, but I don't want to start him. I don't want to start him. If somebody offered me Patrick Mahomes in a trade in 1 quarterback, I would say, I'll just tell you right now, I don't want him. I don't want him. He's like the QB 15. And with Rashee Rice going down for the year, and if they acquire a wide receiver, I guess maybe, but still, yeah, I would not. He's a name this year. Obviously, let's call a spade a spade. Who's the number 1 quarterback you want starting for your NFL team any given week? The answer is Patrick Mahomes. In 1 quarterback fantasy leagues, the answer is almost anybody who's viable over Patrick Mahomes. Like the guys I would start over Patrick Mahomes, or that I would start Patrick Mahomes over, are like, I don't know, Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson. But even if Anthony Richardson's able to figure things out, I want to start Richardson over Mahomes. Like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Sam Darnold, Andy Dalton. These are not the names that you expect to lump Patrick Mahomes in, but from a fantasy perspective, I want to start everybody else over him. So I would just drop him right back and pick up another running back or wide receiver. I would drop him right back. Send him right back to waivers. He wasn't your draft pick, so you're not losing anything by dropping him. I would just rock with Kyler and pick up another running back or a wide receiver, whoever your favorite guy is from either position. Seriously. Mahomes is not, he's viable in superflex leagues only. He's not viable in 1 quarterback. Not viable. What's going on, Greg? Good to see you. Congrats on playing Joe Mixon. He had a great day against the New England Patriots. Nice to see. And again, for anybody just jumping in, first of all, welcome. Second of all, a perk of being a member of the channel is I will get to you guys a little bit quicker. So appreciate everybody's patience as I work through member questions and comments. If you're interested in becoming a member of the channel, those details are in the first link in the description of this stream and all videos and streams on the channel. I just ask for patience otherwise as I work through my member questions. Appreciate that in advance. For a tight end pickup this week, I mean, Zach Ertz, I've been saying Uncle Ertz all season long. He came back to life this past week. I think he was like the tight end 10 on the week. Still doing it. And they have a good matchup this week. The Carolina Panthers at home. Yeah. Against the Baltimore Ravens, Zach Ertz, 5 targets, 4 catches, 68 yards. Hell yeah, Zach Ertz. Still doing it at the ripe old age of 86, his number. Then now he gets Carolina at home this week. I mean, Ertz is the tight end waiver wire ad this week. If you don't have an obvious name at tight end, like Ferguson's on bye. Who are the other week 7 buys? I know there are several. The Bears. So if you don't have Cole Kmet, you might have been streaming him. Congrats if you did. Oh, it's just those 2 teams, the Cowboys and the Bears. So yeah, if you have Jake Ferguson, if you have Cole Kmet, and or if there's an injury at the position that you're dealing with, Zach Ertz would be the guy for me. You could go Cade Otton as well. If you get outbid on Ertz, Cade Otton plays the Ravens this week. That's who Zach Ertz just had a good game against. But I'll take anybody playing the Carolina Panthers defense, and Ertz at home looks like a good option given that. So I would say Ertz first and then Otton second. Otton plays Baltimore. Again, good matchup. You can't run on Baltimore, but you can throw on Baltimore. So I would say Ertz 1, Otton 2. And Fortune has another question. Demario Douglas or Christian Watson from waivers this week? I like Demario Douglas, but I'm always going to lean the guy who's catching passes from the better quarterback. And Drake May balled out. New England lost by 20, but Drake May had 3 passing scores, showed mobility, escaped bad situations. Something Jacoby Brissett can't really do at this stage of his career. Not that he was ever really known as a scrambler, but Drake May has some mobility. He's going to add a little wrinkle to this offense that makes it a little bit more challenging for opposing defenses. But let's not mince words here. Jordan Love is today in the year 2024 a better quarterback. Therefore, I prefer players who catch passes in the better offenses from the better quarterbacks. So I'm going to lean Watson over Douglas. I'm always going to give a slight edge, and let me star it. I'm always going to give a slight edge on waivers and in general when I'm drafting all that. It's like, who is in the better offense catching passes from the better quarterback? Sometimes it's just that for me. It's like, for better or worse, I know that doesn't always work out exactly. That strategy doesn't just necessarily automatically work, but it's not a bad one to believe in and trust in the better offenses as opposed to the not as good offenses. Drake May played well. Give him credit. 3 passing scores. I think he was like the QB 8 in fantasy on the week. That's not the story for New England fans. The story is that he played pretty well. But right now, Jordan Love is a more reliable, dependable quarterback that you believe in and trust in 2024 right now, and therefore I would prefer to have a healthy Christian Watson. Obviously, he's picked up some injuries over his short NFL career. He has missed time every year. But I'll take a shot on his upside in that offense. I'll give the slight nod to Watson. First of all, I don't think Marvin Harrison, we can expect him to play this week. He picked up a concussion. Generally speaking, when players pick up concussions, they do not play the next week. So if you have Marvin Harrison, I would be making alternate plans tonight, ahead of waivers. It is. See, this is a difficult decision. I would not drop Pittman or Downs. They are difficult to trust with Anthony Richardson coming back, but they are too talented to let go to waivers. They both had good weeks. Pittman less so because, I think he only had like 11 or 12 half PPR points, but still catching a touchdown. He had a good week. He's a good player. He's overcome a little bit of an injury scare this past week to actually play. And his numbers haven't been good with Richardson in there. I don't think we can drop these guys, though. I think you have to stick it out with these dudes. You have to stick it out with Pittman and Downs. If you could trade one, try to catch somebody napping that Anthony Richardson is coming back this week. Try to trade Pittman for another wide receiver. But you can't drop these guys. They're too talented. Yeah, you got to keep those Colts receivers. Otten or Schultz? Otten. For this, if this is, I don't know if this is a waiver, if this is waiver wire, or if you already have both of these guys and it's a start sit, but I'll take Otten, regardless of the structure of the question, because they're playing Baltimore, and Baltimore is getting thrown on, and Zach Ertz, 86-year-old Zach Ertz, just had 4 catches for 68 yards against them, so I'll take Otten. Schultz, he didn't even really do all that much, right? He did a little bit, especially as far as tight ends go. But with no Nico Collins, he was the tight end 22. He had 4 catches for 27 yards. Now, the Texans didn't really – they still scored like 41 points. I guess they didn't need him to win the game, but they still scored a lot of points. He could have been more involved there, and he wasn't. Cade Otton, he's getting Baltimore. Baltimore's getting – lit up through the air, actually. As dominant as they are against the run, they are the opposite against the pass. And again, Zach Ertz just went nuts against them. So, Otten. I got my member question. Shout out again, Fortune, for stopping in. And I think I already kind of covered this, but I'll just briefly repeat myself. No, it's not too soon to play Amari Cooper. If he is active catching passes from Josh Allen this week, we are starting him. That's it. We are starting him. Who do they play this week? I don't even remember. Wait, it's not the Chiefs. I thought they have the Chiefs like coming up in a few weeks, but it's not them. Who's he got this week? Still shows Sleeper hasn't updated his like opponent schedule yet. The Titans. Tough matchup. He's going to see L'Jarius Sneed, but it's a home game, and it's Amari Cooper. And now he's catching passes from Josh Allen. He's in our lineup. Is Slayton droppable? It depends. If it's for, is Slayton droppable? And then the follow-up question is, would I rather have Tutu or Whittington? I would rather have Whittington than Darius Slayton if Cooper Kupp is out. And I guess Puka's still not going to come back. It would depend on if it would also depend on Malik Neighbors' availability. Slayton didn't have a terrible night. It was a much more low-scoring game than I thought it would be. Neighbors has missed 2 weeks with a concussion, so you would think his odds of returning after a third week are good. So, yeah, I guess I'd rather have Whittington than Slayton. Especially because, again, I would think Neighbors, they both might return this week, but I would probably say Neighbors is more likely to come back than Kupp. That being said, I think they're both expected to potentially return this week. So, yeah, I guess I would rather have Whittington because while Neighbors returns for the Giants and that hurts Slayton, Puka is still out for the Rams. So that could spell positive news for Whittington, even in Cooper Kupp's return. So, yeah, I guess I would prefer Whittington over Slayton. And yep, Kyler is a name and Baker has the stats. That is 100% correct. That is 100% correct. But I do not believe, I'm sorry, I don't, from a purely fantasy perspective, I do not believe in Mahomes in one quarterback leagues. Superflex, different conversation. One quarterback, I don't want him. I don't want him at all. Trade Dalton and JMO for May in a Superflex dynasty. You have Allen, you have Goff, you have Garrett Wilson, you have Brian Thomas, you have Devontae, you have Metcalf, you have Adunze. Am I crazy for thinking out loud or thinking to myself like I'd rather keep JMO? What did JMO do against the Cowboys? I missed his specific performance because I had to do some personal work stuff. Oh, he had a good 3 for 76 and a score. That's right. That's right. He did catch a touchdown. Is it crazy? Am I crazy for saying in this, I would dangle Metcalf and Dalton instead of JMO? I want to keep JMO, especially because you have Goff. I don't want to break up that stack. I would be okay with this trade. And maybe this is crazy of me. I would rather see if you can move Metcalf in that deal instead of Jameson Williams. If you can move Metcalf, keep JMO, keep that stack together what you have with Goff to acquire May, and move off of Dalton, who's 36 years old, and acquire May, who's got his whole career ahead of him. I'm way into that. Could you flop or flip Metcalf into that trade instead of JMO? If you can, I would say yes. It's just Metcalf is older and he's obviously really good, but for fantasy, he's a little bit more volatile week to week than the perception is of him. I'd rather keep JMO and keep that stack together. I'm going with the hat. The hair is looking a little like I need to get that cut soon. I'm going with the hat. Yeah. I would rather give up Metcalf instead of JMO. And if you can make Dalton and DK for May and happen in Superflex, in a Superflex dynasty, I'm into that. I'm into that. Just wait on Kyler. I don't know. I don't know. He's been so mid. He's been so boring. He's been so boring. It's been a disappointment. But we'll see. Do you trade Jaden Daniels for Puka when you have Baker? Who are your wide receivers? I don't know that I necessarily want to trade Jaden Daniels. I understand because I am very much a proponent of only rostering one quarterback in one quarterback leagues. But I don't know if Jaden Daniels is the guy that I want to give up. Of course, Baker is like top 3 in so many statistical categories right now, specifically as it pertains to fantasy. But Jaden Daniels is like king of the castle right now at the quarterback position. You honestly have probably the best quarterback situation in the league, in your league anyway. Puka will not practice this week, which means he will not return week 7. Prior to that, which comes as no surprise because it was only 16 days ago that we were told that Puka was expected to miss at least another month. So I imagine Puka's out for week 7 and he's probably out for week 8. Don't the Rams have a week 9 bye? Or no, they have a week 6 bye. They just cleared their bye. So that's good news. I don't know who else I was thinking of. So I guess in theory he could return at any time, but the 16 days ago, we got an update that Puka was going to miss at least another month. So that means probably missing week 7, week 8, and week 9. So the soonest you would have Puka is theoretically week 10, and that's with no setbacks or issues. I don't mind the calculated risk, but if I am trading one of the best quarterbacks for fantasy, and right now you have two of them, Jaden Daniels and Baker are two of the best quarterbacks to have in fantasy. I would prefer to have a guy who is healthy now. I would prefer to have a guy who's healthy now. I like the calculated risk, the idea to acquire a guy who can be a top flight wide receiver, but I have a little bit of pause with Puka because I don't know how much more time he's going to miss, and I don't know how likely we are to see vintage Puka coming off of an extended absence like this one. I like the idea of moving off one of these two quarterbacks, but I would want a high-end stud. And Puka is a high-end stud, but he's not healthy. And we don't know what he's going to be like whenever he comes back. And we don't know when he's going to come back. So I'm lukewarm on this. I wouldn't blame you if you pulled the trigger, but I have a little bit of pause because when are we going to see Puka? Week 9, week 10? And when's he going to be fully, himself again? Week 12, week 13, maybe, hopefully. I don't know. Nobody does. I want a healthy guy. I want a healthy guy for an elite option at quarterback. Or I would need another extra piece, even if it was like a low end running back, and then maybe. But I would sell high on either one of these two because they're two of the top elite options in at the quarterback position right now. Half PPR, Saquon, Metcalf, Bowers, or Bijan, Neighbors, Ferguson. I'd rather have Saquon than Bijan. I'd rather have Neighbors than Metcalf. And I'd rather have Bowers than Ferguson. I think. Yeah, I think so. Now that Devontae Adams we already knew he was not likely to come back, but now that he's definitively gone, nothing is stopping Brock Bowers from going absolutely ballistic as far as the target share that he's going to receive. I'd rather have Saquon than Bijan. I'd rather have Bowers than I really would rather have Neighbors than DK, but I would rather have Saquon than Bijan, and I'd rather have Bowers than Ferguson. So I'll take the first side here. Even though I would love to have Neighbors instead of DK, but I'll take the other two pieces, Saquon and Bowers, over Bijan and Ferguson. Yep. So side A or side 1, whatever you want to call it. And yes, Greg, real quick, just jumping down to my member questions. Yeah, Justin Fields can be dropped. Justin Fields can be dropped because who's going to pick him up? Who's going to pick him up? Like you can comfortably drop him. You can drop Justin Fields in one quarterback leagues. In Superflex leagues, that's a harder pill to swallow and maybe one that you don't want to necessarily do. But in one quarterback leagues, we can drop Justin Fields. He's not going to play this week, or that it's all like we're getting all the reports. It's trying. Oh, he might like split the reps with Russell Wilson. All right, well, I don't want anything to do with that for fantasy. If they're not going to play him as QB1 all game, then I don't. Then he can be. You can move on from him. And if you have Jordan Love, it's full steam ahead with Jordan Love anyway. So, yes, drop Fields. Drop Fields. You only ever need one quarterback and one tight end in one quarterback leagues. You only ever need one tight end ever, and you only ever need one quarterback in one quarterback leagues. I just don't like having more than one of the onesie positions. If I have two quarterbacks in a one quarterback league, or if I have two tight ends anywhere, That's just a headache that I don't feel like dealing with most weeks. If I have to ask myself that question, this guy or that guy at a onesie position, I'd rather have a 5th or 6th running back or a 5th or 6th wide receiver. So, yes, you have Jordan Love. It's full steam ahead with Jordan Love. Justin Fields presumably has lost his job. He could get it back, but for now, you can drop him. For now, you can drop him. So that can be the guy that you drop for Demario Douglas is fine. Dobbs is fine. Any one of those guys is fine. I guess you could. I mean, I don't know if Juju is the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver 1 for now, but I guess he could be up there as well. I'd give the slight nod to Demario Douglas, I think, and then Dobbs. Because Demario Douglas is going to be, until Jalen Polk fully emerges, and he's showing promise, but he's still getting there. Douglas should be viable week to week with better quarterback play, and it looks like Drake May is probably going to provide that. Drop Fields, pick up Douglas. I'm fine with that. Back up to where I left off. Is there much money in streaming? Not real. I mean, if I had 10 times the following, there might be, but that's okay. I don't need, this is just something I like to do. But I appreciate the kind words, interesting factoids. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming in and hanging out. There's not much money in this, and that's okay. There are people who do support me and support the channel, and that's much appreciated, and that's what makes me want to do this. But yeah, it's I don't know. I just enjoy it. It's just fun. I like doing this stuff, and I appreciate you guys thinking enough to come hang out throughout the week. Yeah, there's a little bit, but yeah, I have there's other reasons other than the money. Just like doing it. Yeah, drop Fields, Greg, and appreciate it, Fortune. Always appreciate you coming in. Fortune's a content creator himself. Give him a follow. Not fantasy football, but he's got all other types of skills and talents. You should check him out. He'll whip up a super sick beat for you. 100%. What's up, David? Good to see you. I don't mind the idea to pick up Juju, but I don't want to drop any of those guys. I know like Keenan Allen had a nice day. You probably didn't start him this past weekend. How could you have? Nobody was advising to start him. He just hadn't done anything to this point this year. But now it's like, okay, well, now I don't want to drop him because he showed signs of life, and we know how good Keenan Allen has been and potentially still could be. So I don't really want to drop him. Odunze has more promise and upside than Juju, even though Juju probably has a better opportunity. And same thing with Worthy. His upside is really good. Yeah, I don't know that I can move off of any of those guys for Juju. I guess if you're desperate for a wide receiver because the Bears are on bye this week, I don't really want to drop Odunze, though. And the Bears, you can say the Bears have had a soft schedule for the past month, but like Caleb Williams is looking really good. So like Odunze's time will come. Wide receiver 93, 59, week 4, 94. He had 1 week, Rome Odunze. Week 3, he was the wide receiver 7. We want to have patience with guys like this. He's just a rookie. I don't want to, and I definitely don't want to drop Algier. He's too valuable of running back depth. I definitely don't drop Algier if you have Bijan and you're not dropping Brees or Bijan. I mean, how desperate are you to add Juju? Like, how badly do you need a wide receiver this week? All those names I want to keep. I want to keep all those names. Like even Worthy, I know Worthy's been a little, we've seen the flashes, though, with Worthy. Not just week 1. Week 4, 3 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown. They were on the bye this past week, but figure his involvement is only going to go up now that the Chiefs are past their bye week. Rashee Rice is gone. I don't want to drop Xavier Worthy. I mean, you have Olave. Can you put him in the IR spot? Do you have an IR spot? If you don't, you need to talk to your commissioner about adding injured reserve spots. I think he's still ruled out. I think you could put him, if you don't have an IR spot, then that's the biggest issue here. You need to talk to your commissioner about an IR spot for Olave. If you have one, then put Olave in the IR spot, and that way you can make a free pickup. If you don't have the IR spot, that is a conversation we need to have with your commissioner to add those at the end of the season. But I don't want to drop any of those players. I don't. If you absolutely have no choice, then sure, fine. I guess you can drop a Dunze, but I don't really want to do that. If you have to. Showing him as questionable. You must be on Yahoo, because I believe he is still ruled out on Sleeper, but he will be ruled questionable likely tomorrow. Yeah, he's still ruled out on Sleeper. So you could put him in IR and Sleeper. Okay. Or ESPN. Move your leagues. Everybody, move your leagues to Sleeper next year. Talk to your commissioners. If you're playing Yahoo, if you're playing ESPN, I can't stress this enough. This is honestly the best advice I feel like I can give to all of you, regardless of your own personal questions. If you still play on Yahoo or if you still play on ESPN, move your league to Sleeper. Thank me later. Seriously. Yeah, if you absolutely need somebody, David, I guess you can drop a Dunze, but I don't really want to do that. But if you have to, then you can. Where are we at? Josh Downs for Marvin Harrison. I mean, I'd still rather take the chance on Harrison just because of the pedigree and the expectations. Especially with Anthony Richardson returning for the Colts. I don't know how much I trust Anthony Richardson in the short term to maximize Josh Downs or Michael Pittman. So I'd rather still take the chance on Harrison. He's not going to play this week with the concussion, but I think I'd still rather take the chance on Harrison. I like Josh Downs a lot, but if I was offered Josh Downs for Marvin Harrison and I acquire Marvin Harrison 1-for-1, I would have a hard time saying no to that. I feel like I would have to take Marvin Harrison and roll the dice, especially with Anthony Richardson coming back. Yeah. Give me Harrison. If I knew Joe Flacco was going to be the Colts quarterback all season long, this is a different conversation. But he's not going to be the quarterback all season long. So I'll say Harrison. And yeah, I agree. Harrison wins that. Some conversation about some other questions. I love to see it. I always encourage folks to talk to help each other out. If you have 2 cents that you think can be helpful, feel free to add it for anybody's questions. I definitely encourage that. We're all trying to help each other out here. What are my thoughts on? So I guess okay. So I did go over this at the top of the show. If you want to just rewind and ignore me right now. But I like this move for Cooper quite a bit. I think he's a high-end wide receiver 2 with low-end wide receiver 1 upside rest of season. I'm not ranking him as a wide receiver 1 yet. There's probably going to be some growing pains because it's a new system, new situation. They have 0 reps between the two of them, but Allen and Cooper. They'll work on that. Obviously, they'll take a couple of weeks probably to find their footing, how one another like to operate. Sort all that stuff out, those logistics. The difference of going from Deshaun Watson to Josh Allen is significant, though, for Cooper. And I like his value his arrow's pointing straight up rest of season. He can still do it. He's still getting open. Deshaun Watson just doesn't throw catchable balls because he's a broken quarterback. And by the way, now he's going to completely bottom out with, now he loses. He's already terrible, and he just lost his far and away best wide receiver. Rest in peace, Browns offense. We hardly knew ye. Yeah, I mean, Cooper, easy top 15 wide receiver rest of season, and he'll have top 12 upside once once he finds his footing in the Bills' offense, I would think. Yeah. Arrow's pointing straight up on Amari Cooper. Pointing straight up on Amari Cooper. Jumping really quickly back down to David. If you want J.K. Dobbins, you're going to have to give up a decent amount for him, I would think. I mean, it's like, so look at the rest of that person's roster. And this is for anybody who's negotiating a trade. What does the person that you are trading with, what does that player need? What does that roster need? Do they need a wide receiver? Then you could dangle, God, I don't know. You're going to have to give up one of either Evans, Higgins, or Olave, and I don't know if I like that as much. I mean, you could try like Kincaid and is that Braylon Allen? That's not going to work. Not for J.K. Dobbins. I mean, you could try one of your tight ends, McBride or Kincaid, and then okay. If they're struggling at tight end, I mean, offer Kincaid and one of either Worthy or Odunze. See if that gets it done. You may have to up that to Kincaid and Algier. You could offer Keenan Allen as well. That's fine. If you want to try that, like try Kincaid and Keenan Allen. Maybe that gets it done. But you're going to be short at wide receiver for a little bit, assuming Olave misses Thursday Night Football with a concussion, which in all likelihood he will. But you could try that. Try one of those tight ends. Try one of McBride or Kincaid. You could probably try Kincaid at first. And one of those depth wide receivers. See if that gets it done. But yeah, that's a good way to operate. You have a guy in your sights. Cool. What does that team need? Address their needs. That's going to pique their interest way more than just like, if you offered another running back. Yeah. Find a team's, if you have a trade partner in mind because you have a player that somebody wants, identify what they need on their team, and that'll pique their interest in a trade. And that's how you get something done. All right. I'm moving back up to the top. Trade Bucky and Keenan Allen and Mahomes for Baker. That's too much. A 3-for-1 where the one is a quarterback? No. And Baker's balling out, but no. I would just drop Mahomes and pick up another running back or wide receiver. Because you have Kyler Murray. You might as well just rock with him. He can still be, because he runs, he can still be a viable quarterback. Or you could try to trade Kyler and another depth piece for Baker. But I would just drop Mahomes and pick up another running back or wide receiver. And maybe see if that pickup plus Kyler gets it done for Baker. You could try that. We talked about the Cam Akers trade to the Vikings. Thank you. Interesting factoids. Also talked about Ty Chandler. I just like him. I like him a little less as a waiver wire pickup this week with Cam Akers headed to Minnesota. I would rather have like a Tyrone Tracy if you're between running back options. 160 points. Congrats. That's always fun. Nicely done. Who wins this trade? It's a super flex trade. Mahomes and Montgomery or Bijan DJ Moore? Because it's super flex, this is where I'll say the team acquiring the quarterback wins. And David Montgomery is like a top 10. Would I rather have David Montgomery rest of season than Bijan Robinson? That is a real conversation that you can have. So the fact that you also are acquiring a quarterback in a super flex trade and not having to give one up, give me the quarterback side. I know I just talked shit about Mahomes in one quarterback leagues, and that still stands. There are a lot of quarterbacks in one quarterback leagues I'd rather have than Mahomes, but in Superflex, that tune changes. Mahomes still has tons of value in Superflex leagues. It's in a Superflex trade where side one gets a quarterback and side two doesn't get a quarterback. In all likelihood, it's side one. The fact that you're getting David Montgomery as well, it's a clear win for me, the Mahomes side. Bijan is good. DJ Moore is good, Mahomes in Superflex plus David Montgomery, who has been an RB1 this year and is probably an RB1 rest of season. Mahomes' side is the clear winner. Mahomes' side is the clear winner in Superflex. I got my member questions. Thank you again to my members for your support. Greg, Fortune, David, good to see all of you. Thanks for coming in. And I did get this one. Hopefully you caught my answer, but if you didn't, I would rather have the first pairing. I would rather have Saquon than Bijan. I would rather have Neighbors than DK, and I would rather have Bowers than Ferguson. So that's a 2-for-1 in favor. That's a 2-to-1 in favor of the Saquon side. So I'll take Saquon. I got Greg's question about dropping Fields for Ertz. Definitely do that. Fields lost his job. There's another trade offer. You got offered Devontae Smith for Davante Adams. It's an interesting proposition. I think I would still rather have Devontae Smith. I think I would still rather have Devontae Smith. Adams gets a boost from the simple fact that he is now going to play, but he's not going to get the guaranteed number one target share that he has enjoyed for most of his career. Garrett Wilson is not going away. And Devontae Smith is already excelling in that position next to A.J. Brown. We already feel good about Devontae Smith, even though he's not the clear-cut wide receiver one. Adams now goes to a familiar situation, catching passes from Aaron Rodgers, but it's a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. It's not necessarily the same. And Garrett Wilson is the younger receiver that is, entering his prime, while Adams is kind of like out of his prime. He's still good. He's still a baller, but he's not in his prime anymore. And Devontae Smith is, again, young, ascending, already really good wide receiver, still probably getting better. I think I would rather have Smith. Obviously, Adams is more accomplished, but fantasy football isn't about life accomplishments. It's about this year. And this year, I think I'd rather have Smith slightly. If Adams had been the one to go to the Bills and not Amari Cooper, then I would probably say Devontae Adams. But he went to the Jets, and he's sharing work with Garrett Wilson. I'll take Devontae Smith, the younger player in that same situation, who is doing just fine. So I might have read it wrong. If you are the one being offered Devontae Smith and giving up Devontae Adams, I would probably take that. I would probably take Devontae Smith, especially now because the Eagles are past their bye week, and the Jets. When's the Jets bye week? I think it's later. I don't think they have their bye already. No, they have a week 12 bye. Devontae's past his bye. Yeah, I'd rather have Devontae Smith. Do you deal Schultz, Achane, and Darnold for Burrow and Madison? Big upgrade going from Darnold to Burrow. Potentially big downgrade going from Achane to Madison. And giving up Schultz, who I don't think has a ton of value, but you are the one giving up the 3 for 2. I don't know about this one. Achane's ceiling will come back when Tua comes back, and he is projected to play football again this season as of right now. I do not think I would do this. I want to wait until Achane's ceiling comes back, and then his value goes up, and I can get more than this. Burrow's an excellent quarterback to have in fantasy for the rest of the season because that Bengals defense is trash. The Bengals offense is going to have to score 3-4 touchdowns a game to stay in most games. Burrow's going to have to be putting up big numbers this year every single week in all likelihood. And so I like Burrow quite a bit, But I would want to wait for Achane to get his value back up, assuming Tua is coming back this year, which it looks like is the case. So I would not be selling Achane right now. I would not be selling any Miami Dolphins. If anything, I would be buying them. I would buy low on them. Madison has been decent, but like the Raiders aren't good. And if Zamir White comes back, who has not been good either, but are they going to put him back in there and now he takes work away from Madison? Now, I'd rather just keep Achane. I'd rather just keep Achane. Are we dropping Ford for someone like Mostert or Michael Wilson? If you're good at running back and could use a wide receiver, then yeah, pick up Michael Wilson. He's probably going to be a wide receiver 2 this week as far as projections because Marvin Harrison is not going to play in all likelihood. He picked up a concussion. So if you're good at running back and need a wide receiver, yeah, pick up Michael Wilson. If you're hurting at running back, I don't know that I want to drop one for a wide receiver. It depends on your situation and what you need. It depends on your situation and what your team needs above anything else. But that being said, Michael Wilson should be a solid play this week with Marvin Harrison out in all likelihood with a concussion. Of course, Kyler needs to play better football as well. Who do they have this week? Who does Arizona have this week? The Chargers at home. It's kind of a stingy matchup. We'll see. I am not trading Achane for Zay Flowers. No. I know Flowers just had a really good game, but he's been volatile this year. And they're not going to need to throw that much every single week. And the way this offense operates, it's not going to be Zay Flowers every single week. No, I'm hanging on to Miami Dolphins. I am to my Miami Dolphins. I'm not trading my Dolphins on a sell low. And I think Flowers is a sell low, sending a running back who, when Tua is healthy, Achane has league-winning potential. I don't know that Flowers has league-winning potential. He's a good football player, but he's going to be inconsistent in this Ravens offense. I know he's coming off of a really good week, but that week is over now. You're not getting those points. Those points are done. They're history. That doesn't help you in week 7 or 8 or 9. I'd rather roll the dice on my Miami Dolphins. Because we're expecting Tua to come back. Yeah, I would hang on to Achane. If anything, I would trade for Devon Achane. I would try to trade for Tyreek Hill. I would try to trade for Jalen Waddle. I am not trying to trade any of these guys away. Not with the prognosis that we currently have, which is that Tua is expected to come back at some point. What's the latest on Tua? I think he had there was like a new update today. Expected back this season. Won't play this week, which we already knew. Yeah. I would not be selling my Dolphins. Got my members. Appreciate you guys again, as always. Let's see. David's got another question. You can go for any one of those running backs. I mean, I probably wouldn't go after Pollard. I know that Pollard's been good, and Tajay Spears is now hurt. I just don't trust that offense rest of season. These other 3 guys are in way better offenses. I'm fine with take your pick. Like Jacobs is good in a good offense. Brian Robinson is good in a good offense. J.K. Dobbins is good in a run first offense with a good quarterback. Like their prospects are fine. I would say not Pollard. He's been solid, but I just don't trust this Titans offense rest of season. Any one of those guys. If you want Josh Jacobs, try for Josh Jacobs. If you want Brian Robinson, I'm fine with any one of those guys. Truly. I like Jacobs. I like Brian Robinson, even though he missed this past week, and I like Dobbins. I like all those guys as options to potentially buy. And they're all like in the same range of like expected outcomes. They're all solid RB2s. I would take any one of them. Not Pollard. Jacobs, Brian Robinson, J.K. Dobbins. I would take any one of them for the deal that we talked about. One of your tight ends and one of your wide receivers. I got my other member questions. Thank you, guys. You have Kelsey. Or you have Mark Andrews. Is that what this is? Do you trade Ridley and 3/3 for Kelsey? Sure. Yeah. I mean, because Ridley is difficult to trust right now. His career trajectory has like is wild and all over the place. And right now it's in a nosedive because his quarterback play is atrocious. Yeah, that's fine. You can. Mark Andrews had a nice game this past week. We don't know if that's going to continue for the rest of the season. It might. We've seen Mark Andrews be a top flight tight end for a long time. Hasn't been the case for this year. Maybe he bounces back moving forward. I don't know. But Kelsey figures to remain heavily involved in the Chiefs offense now because they lost Rashee Rice. They don't have the luxury of like load managing Travis Kelsey anymore. They need him. So sure. If you can get Kelsey for Ridley and 3/3, Ridley is not a viable asset right now, then sure, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with that. What's up, Crumbly Heads? Good to see you. I know you had a trade question in the Discord. I intended to respond to it, and then I just didn't. It was Cooper for a 26 first? I mean, if you're a contender, and I think you are in the situation you're referring to, don't you have Josh Allen in that situation, Crumbly Heads? I mean, fuck it, do it. You're picking up a stack for a future first when, I mean, yeah, we're competing for a championship this year. I'm not worried about, if I'm competing for a championship, I don't care yet about 2026 first round picks. I'll maybe worry about that next year. So yeah, Cooper is still good. You're not going to get him for 2 seconds anymore. His value just went up. You're buying high. But if you're playing for a championship and you already have Josh Allen, then I think that makes sense. I think it makes sense. We're playing for a chip. We're playing for a chip. Yeah. 2 seconds probably is not going to get it done at this point. If you can give up a first, you're not going to care about that first one bit if you win the league. And Cooper helps you do that now this year, especially with Josh Allen. Yeah. I would do that. I would do that. As far as Madison and 3/1 for B, John, I mean, the 3/1 probably alone make it worth it. Madison is like not an enticing dynasty buy. That's the only thing. I know he's viable right now, but I don't know how much longer he's going to be viable. But 3/1 is still like super enticing. Bijan's really good, but he's not a bell cow. Tyler Algier is firmly involved in that offense. Yeah. And back-to-back wins? Yeah. Dude, we're talking about glory. now we're talking about history. Yeah. If you have a chance to go back-to-back in a league and be the first person to ever do it, You move all your eggs into one basket. I mean, I would maybe it's short-sighted, maybe, but you put your chips on the table and you go win the league. Yeah. You worry about the 2026 first and maybe 2025. Maybe. And you have Allen. Yes, I would go get Amari Cooper. If a single first round pick 2 years from now can net you a stack that where you acquire a guy with low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 upside, and you already have the quarterback who's throwing him the ball, I mean, yeah, you already know. And David, I missed this one. Do you give Mike Evans to get Tyreek Hill? I want to buy Tyreek Hill, but I don't know that Mike Evans is the guy that I want to give up to make that happen, because Mike Evans is currently attached to one of the best offenses in football and is still doing it at a high level. Yes, in a vacuum 1-for-1, I'd rather have Tyreek Hill, but there is still a window to potentially buy low on him. I mean, you're not going to be able to give up Olave for him because Olave just picked up a concussion and has a terrible quarterback situation right now. I would maybe let that one lie. Focus on Dobbins. I would focus on grabbing a running back. Your receivers are solid. I would focus on grabbing a running back. Let's see. Drop Gibson for Ray Davis, and you have James Cook. And you asked who to pick up Ingram and said, "Well, who's your tight end?" If you've got a viable, Ingram should not be on waivers. Let's get that out of the way. Ingram should not be on waivers. I would have told you that before he had a really good game in London. I know he hasn't done anything to this point this year, but Ingram should not be available. Ingram should be on a roster. You have Kincaid, who has been kind of disappointing this year, and now they add Amari Cooper. Well, maybe that helps Kincaid, to be honest. I would pick up Ingram, and then I would see if there's a tight end needy team in your league who wants Dalton Kincaid. Like, any chance the person in your league who has Josh Allen has a tight end problem? Float that you could stack Allen and Kincaid for a depth running back, like a cheap running back, a cheap wide receiver. If you have Kincaid and Kraft and you could potentially pick up Ingram, that's like 2 tight ends too many for me. I would see if you could find somebody in your league who has a tight end problem. Pick up Ingram, trade Kincaid for some running back depth, and then that way, that's how you acquire your running back depth. And then, I don't know, maybe, I guess don't drop Kraft outright, but he's a tight end. He's going to pop one week and do nothing the next. This is the volatility of the tight end position. Never fall in love with a tight end. They'll break your heart the week after they've won your heart. That's what they do. Right? Like, everyone's bullish on Tucker Kraft, and Tucker Kraft is clearly a good player, and he has earned the right to be the Packers tight end 1 rest of season. It was looking great for him. He had a 2-touchdown performance against the Rams in week 5. It was the number 1 overall tight end on the week. Luke Musgrave gets put on IR. He's going to miss a bunch of time. Kraft to the moon. He promptly follows that up this past week in a good matchup, by the way, with 2 catches for 13 yards. I mean, this is the tight end position. This is what they do. So, yeah, maybe he is droppable. Or try to find a trade partner. Find somebody who's desperate for a tight end. Just be like, I'm just asking for the last running back or last wide receiver on your bench. Don't ask for a lot because you're probably not going to get a lot. They're tight ends. But somebody in your league needs one. Somebody in your league needs one. So I would pick up Ingram, trade Kincaid, get a depth running back, get a depth wide receiver. Yes, I want Ray Davis for that James Cook handcuff, but at least give yourself a little more roster flexibility than what you have now. Because right now, that if you are able to acquire Ingram, now you have a couple, one too many tight ends. That being said, Evan Ingram should not be on waivers. He should be on a roster. Can you drop Pickens for depth? I mean, what kind of depth? That's the thing. I know Pickens is frustrating, but he's too... The vibes around George Pickens right now are bad, but he's too talented for me to just drop outright. I personally can't do it. I would try to trade him before I drop him. If you want to trade him, fine. And if you could use a running back, like fine. Or if you're just wanting like another viable wide receiver, it's like who for depth, what is depth? Who are the depth options that you are dropping Pickens for? That's the question. That's the question. Garrett Wilson plus Freiermuth plus Mostert for Metcalf and Ferguson. I would like this a little bit more if I was a believer in DK Metcalf. And let's not, I don't mean that to say that I don't think that DK Metcalf isn't a really good football player. It's just, he's so inconsistent for fantasy. And I understand having a concern about Garrett Wilson for the rest of the season, but like DK Metcalf can give you strong wide receiver 1 weeks. Week 2, he was the wide receiver 2. So he could be like a top 3 option. Week 3, he was the wide receiver 9. He's also been the wide receiver 63, the wide receiver 28, the wide receiver 53, the wide receiver 49. He should have had a much bigger week this past week, but he didn't. He's got a good playoff schedule. That's good, but you got to get there first. Can DK Metcalf give you a top 5 wide receiver week? Yes. Can he also operate outside the top 40? Yeah, he's done it 3 times this year. I don't really want DK Metcalf. Ferguson is an upgrade over Freiermuth. Wilson, I think, is still a guy I'd rather have than Metcalf even after the Devontae Adams trade. And then Mostert is, there's something to be said for running back depth. And, Mostert retained some value with Devon Achane coming out of the bye week having suffered a concussion. He had 19 carries for 80 yards. He had almost 100 total yards in their last game. No. I say no. I think even with the acquisition of Devontae Adams, it's a downgrade going from Garrett Wilson to DK Metcalf. I don't want DK. He'll give you a wide receiver 5 week, but he'll sandwich it with a couple of wide receiver 40 weeks. He's inconsistent. He's a great player and a great individual talent, but from putting up a numbers perspective, he is just inconsistent, and he always has been. So, no, I don't want to give up Wilson, Freiermuth, Mostert for Metcalf and Ferguson. No, I do not want to do that. You got offered Achane and Brian Thomas. You give up Metcalf and Pollard. Yeah, this is not... let me be very, very clear. I prefer Achane and Brian Thomas Jr. in this trade. But you're probably not... If you need wins now, I don't know that Achane helps you. If you're 1-5 and you need to stack some wins now, Achane helps you down the line. You're kind of, I think you're accurate to think, this would be a good trade. If you were 4-2, I would say yes, absolutely. Even if you were 3-3, I would say yes to this trade. It's a harder sell that you need wins now, and Achane is probably not gonna he's not gonna be maximized again for another couple of weeks. I want to give up DK Metcalf and Tony Pollard, and you could probably sell high on Tony Pollard right now because he's playing well, and Tajay Spears is now hurt. And so to that point, you might be thinking to yourself, well, why don't I just keep Pollard? I'm not a Pollard guy. He has RB1 upside, though, in this stretch. I would wait. I would wait on doing this. I don't mind giving up Metcalf. If you can give up just Metcalf, I would keep Pollard for a couple of weeks. See if you can get a couple of wins. And then in week 9, trade Pollard for Achane. Or you could try anyway. I don't mind trying to give up Metcalf. If you can just give up Metcalf, I'm good with that. But Pollard just received a short-term boost, and Achane's boost isn't coming for another couple of weeks. So I would not do this deal. I wish I could tell you to do the deal because I prefer Achane and Brian Thomas over DK and Pollard in a vacuum. But given the circumstances and your specific situation, I would not do this deal. That being said, I do want to move off of DK Metcalf. He's too inconsistent. It's too inconsistent. We're at the end of the chat. I think I got everybody's questions. If you think I missed your question, let me know, and I can follow up with another answer. But I think we're good. Just like an overarching final thoughts on waivers before I wrap this up for the evening. If you're looking at targeting running backs, obviously I would say Tyrone Tracy is top dog if he's available. I probably prefer Ray Davis or a Tyler Goodson to Ty Chandler now that Cam Akers has been traded to Minnesota. But Ty Chandler is still viable for like this week if you are really desperate for running back help. But I would prioritize Tyrone Tracy if he's still available. At wide receiver, you can go Juju. You can go Christian Watson. I actually probably prefer Christian Watson. I like the deep threat catching passes from Love. He's boom bust, but I know he's got plenty of talent, and he's a little bit more of an ascending player than Juju is at this stage of Juju's career. Watson, Dobbs, Juju are all fine targets at wide receiver if you really need one. Michael Wilson, if he's still available, will probably operate as the wide receiver 1 for the Cardinals this week with no Marvin Harrison, likely to miss the game due to a concussion. Speaking of wide receivers, Bub Means is a trendy pickup this week. I don't know that I'm necessarily willing to go that far. Chris Olave is not going to play because of a concussion. Rashid Shaheed might not play this week on a short week dealing with a knee injury. I don't know what his status report is for today. So the Saints are going in basically super shorthanded. And with Spencer Rattler, I don't trust a wide receiver 3 or 4 ascending to a wide receiver 1 role out of necessity. He missed practice again for the second straight day. Yeah. I'm not going that deep for Bub Means, but Michael Wilson, Demario Douglas, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, Juju Smith-Schuster, all viable streaming ads for wide receiver. Zach Ertz, Kate Otten, good streaming options this week at tight end. I guess Jawan Johnson and Foster Moreau might be like viable out of necessity. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed not looking good for playing on a short week this Thursday against the Broncos. So Jawan Johnson and Foster Moreau might be fine. After that, it's slim pickings, and Ty Conklin can probably be dropped with the acquisition of Devontae Adams for the Jets. Quarterback. Well, obviously, in one quarterback leagues, if you have Dak or if you have Caleb Williams and you need a guy, if Aaron Rodgers is out there, he just received a huge boost. You could go Daniel Jones against the Eagles, favorable matchup. You could go Andy Dalton. They're playing Washington, favorable matchup. You could try Matthew Stafford, assuming Cooper Kupp returns this week. If Kupp is back, that's a boost for Matthew Stafford in a good matchup against the Raiders. All decent streaming options in one quarterback leagues, but there are only 2 teams on bye this week, so there may not be a big need at quarterback in one quarterback leagues this week. I mean, who to target? So it's kind of who to target if you're trying to trade DK. I think the first thing you got to do is go around your league, see who needs wide receiver help. And then I don't know the rest of your roster. Is running back your strength? Is wide receiver your strength? If wide receiver is your strength, then trade Metcalf for a running back. If running back is your strength and you're hurting at tight end, see if you can get a really good option at tight end for Metcalf and just sell him off a name recognition. You could try to trade for a comparable wide receiver, for another different wide receiver. You could try a Brandon Ayuk. And it's a sell. It's a buy low on Ayuk. You could try him. You could try DJ Moore coming off a bad week and going into his bye week, although you need wins now, so that might not be viable. Try to trade for Devontae Adams and sell on the fact that Adams, now he's a Jet. He's going to split work with Garrett Wilson. But personally, I'd still rather have Adams than DK Metcalf because Metcalf is super inconsistent. It's it depends on a lot of different variables. Who in your league needs a wide receiver? And then what do you need? Do you need running back help? Then target a running back. Okay, you have good wide receivers. You could Breece Pollard. You could use a running back. Go around your league, see who is strong at running back and weak at wide receiver, and start there. See if they want Metcalf for their RB3 or 2. You could even, depending on who they have. So go around your league. Who needs wide receiver help? Who has running backs? And talk to those people. All right. We are at the end of the chat. I went over my overarching thoughts on waiver wire options for you this week. So I think that about does it. I will be back again on Thursday Night Football, ahead of Thursday Night Football, Saints, Broncos. There might not be a lot of points scored in that game, but we watch anyway because it's likely got fantasy implications one way or another for you. So I will be live 6 p.m. Eastern once again ahead of Thursday Night Football. And then I will have my Saturday start-sit stream, so you can bring your start-sit questions. You can bring them on Thursday, but they're best saved for the weekend when we have Friday practice reports and all of the information available to us going into the week. That'll be a 5 p.m. Eastern start this Saturday. Probably not. There's a third straight London game, so probably no Sunday morning stream, but I will be available in Discord if you need me at that time. Second link in the description of this live stream and any of the videos and streams on the channel gets you an evergreen invite into the Discord. You can join the community over there if you are interested. But if there's nothing else, best of luck with your waiver wire options and or trade negotiations tonight and going into the rest of the week. You can always reach me in Discord if you have questions during the week, or you can leave a comment in the form of a question in the form of a comment on any of my videos or streams, and I can get to it as I can. If there's nothing else, best of luck with waivers. Best of luck with trade negotiations. I will see you guys Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, ahead of Saints Broncos. I can take other questions there. We can start looking at potential start-sit questions, especially if it pertains to Thursday Night Football. But that'll do it for me. Appreciate you guys coming in, hanging out tonight, and spending some time. Special shout out to my members. I saw Fortune, I saw Greg, I saw David, and I saw Crumply Heads. Thank you all. Appreciate your support. And everyone again for coming in and hanging out for however much time you spent this evening. Enjoy your Tuesday night, and I will see you guys on Thursday. Thanks, everybody.